I want to talk about my experience attending the Western Historical Association History Conference in October of 2024. It was a 4-day conference in Kansas City, Missouri. It was actually a combined historical conference, the Western Historical Conference, or sorry, Western Historical Association, and the Southern Historical Association did a kind of a combined, kind of a dual, well, concurrent conference. It was a really good experience. I learned a lot, met some interesting people. I wanted to highlight a couple of the experiences at the conference that informed, my class lectures, which is kind of part of the point to connect professionally and then learn professionally, and then share that information with students. The first panel, the first panel I want to talk about was it was a gentleman who did a paper on Tecumseh and his brother Tensikawa. And the thesis of the paper was that, in U.S. history, when you study U.S. history in the classroom, we talk about Tecumseh, for a little bit in the context of American expansion west. And so we talk about Tecumseh, and we mention Tensikawa, and then once they're done, once we're done with them, we move on to bigger and better things. It, it kind of the European American kind of emphasis on expansion west. So we move on to the War of 1812, you know, and Andrew Jackson after that. And so it the paper really wanted to get us to thinking about how we teach our narratives in class. Um, who's Tecumseh, who's his brother Tensikawa, more than he had visions, and Tecumseh used those visions to inspire Native Americans to resist American expansion west. And so the paper really kind of focused on like Tensikawa's work after, like after the spotlight of American history moves on to other things. What was Tensikawa doing? And so he continued to be a leader for his people when they went west. He continued to speak for Native American issues during his period. And I really liked the paper and really kind of opened my eyes. And the actually that semester, even though if I remember correctly, I think for my History 101 class we had passed that point, but I talked about it a little bit in class and integrated some of that into my lecture. We kind of talk about what happens to these people after quote unquote we're quote unquote done with them, end quote. And so I thought it was a really good broadening of history. Another paper I wanted to highlight. It was really interesting. It was the American Revolution in context of internationalism. What was going on in the Western Hemisphere? What was going on in Europe? How did Europe and um, the European empires in the New World, how did they kind of view the American Revolution? And how did it play a part in, like, for example, South America? Um, kind of play a part in their revolutions in the next decades. And so that was a really good panel. It was like a panel discussion on, looking at the American Revolution in a broader context. And so I really enjoyed that. And looking at, when I talked to my students about the American Revolution, really, kind of talking about that, it didn't happen in a bubble. What's kind of that international context of the American Revolution? The last experience, or well, the last panel experience I wanted to share was it was a really interesting panel discussion on the Civil War and how it's viewed in American history. And one of the panelists wrote a book, or no, well, sorry, one of the panelists had written a book about Indian Indian conflict, Native American conflict during the war, and referenced another Western historian who said that whose main thesis of a book was the Civil War was an Indian war. And so we spent a lot of time on that one. And what really struck me about that discussion was one of the panels was a Native American lady, a Native American scholar, and she talked about kind of, when you, it's kind of a little known part of the Civil War, not really talked about. I actually didn't know a lot about it at the time. During the Civil War, some Native American tribes in Oklahoma or Indian Territory, or what's today Oklahoma, they joined the Confederacy and fought for the Confederacy. And she talked about that experience, and what was interesting to me is it really highlighted, if your study of history is so inflexible, so regimented, where everyone has to play their part no matter what, it really kind of takes away the human experience. And, for example, in our popular discourse today, it's like today the popular consensus is, Confederacy bad, Native Americans good, right? And that's it. And so it really, well, okay, but you go back and you study the past and you hear experiences like this one where some Native American tribes in Oklahoma joined the Confederacy. The good guys joined the bad guys. And, to me it was a lesson in why you can't be so inflexible in your historical interpretations and so expecting that everyone in the past plays the part you want. You're gonna have some uncomfortable discussions, and you have some uncomfortable situations like that one. And so we had a discussion on that, and she went over kind of why the Native American tribes in Oklahoma, they felt the U.S. government had wronged them. The Confederacy, they felt like the U.S. government had wronged them. And so, she got to explain, how do different people look at things? They're human beings making choices, and they don't always make the choices we want. They don't fit our script. And so that was a really lesson to me. I mean, we see it all the time when you study history. World War II, well, we're the good guys. U.S., we're the good guys. Okay, great. And, and then you get into, Japanese American internment. Well, that doesn't look like what good guys do. That looks like what the bad guys do, Mr. Bills. And so history is the study of human beings. Human beings don't fit into this inflexible, rigid script and play that we want to put them in. Human beings are human beings, and they're going to do different things based on the motivations at the time. And so that was a really good discussion, and I found it interesting. To me, it was just the importance of just being flexible in your historical interpretations. And you can't force people. It's presentism. You can't force people into being the way you want, right? A couple of other minor experiences really quick. Not minor, well, major to me, I guess, but, adjunct to the history conference. One, I went to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. It was a really good trip. A lot of cool stuff. And I do have pictures of it. If you want to see them, you're welcome to email me. I didn't share any in my binder, but I do have them available. They're very cool. Then I also went to Independence, Missouri. My religious faith settled in Independence, Missouri area for a while in the 1830s. So that was a personal, historical kind of experience for me that I really enjoyed. And so it was a weekend of just a lot of history and a lot of interesting thinking about how we study history.